Once upon a time, there lived a bee, and she was the busiest bee that ever existed. She would spend all the time she had flying from flower to flower, gathering pollen, and then returning back to the hive to deposit her baskets and fly out back again. And one day, so busy she was that she has not noticed that the rain was coming. She filled her basket so high with the golden pollen and was about to take off from the flower when suddenly a drop fell down on her. She quickly jumped to the side of the flower and hid under a petal, thinking of an exit strategy. But it was too late. The rain was here. Big juicy drops were falling down, and there was not a sign of it stopping. With disappointment, the bee dropped off her baskets and tried to find the restful position under the petal. But her body didn't know how to rest. So her wings kept sticking out, her bum up in the air. She kept tripping and falling, and at once she felt so deeply into the flower that her baskets rolled and all the pollen came all over her. And right in that moment she heard a laughter. She wiped her eyes with curiosity. "Who is here?" she asked. "Well, that is me. A flower you are in. A dandelion." It was a kind and loving voice. So the bee knew she was safe here. But she was surprised. "I didn't know that flowers can talk," she said. "I thought you only produce pollen for us to collect. You just never stayed here long enough to hear the flowers talk," the dandelion answered. "We love when bees visit. I love when the bees visit. I heard the most magnificent of stories from your sisters. And I tell them of everything I know and all the stories I hear. And most of the times we start singing, and we make up poetry and speak the words of beauty. And it's always so much fun." Meanwhile, as the flower was talking, the bee cleaned her wings and sat down finally. "Well, I don't do such a thing," she said. "It is a waste of time. My job is to collect pollen to bring it back to hive so I could make honey, the sweetest honey of all. And the more pollen there is, the more chances of that. Sitting and talking and singing and dancing sounds nice, but I do not have time for this. And when I see my sisters do that, I think it's reckless, really, and a bit lazy. They should really work more if we have any chance of surviving the winter." She started to gather the pollen back in her baskets, busying around the flower. "Oh, dear bee," said the dandelion, "the sweetness of honey doesn't come from the pollen. The sweetness of honey comes from the stories and dances, for it is joy and love which makes it sweet. For it is joy and love that makes the most potent of honey. You could try yourself and see what's that like." The bee was not impressed with his answer. "But I guess since it is raining, and there is very little I can do, which is a huge disappointment, by the way, but perhaps I can try. For there is nothing else to do here anyway, and I'm not accustomed to singing still. But dear flower, I have never danced before, and I must ask you to tell me how to do such a thing." She stood up on her feet. "Close your eyes," said Dandelion gently, "and take a breath in. And now listen. Listen to the sound around you. You are exactly where you need to be, and there is nowhere else where you must be right now. You are here, dear bee, and I am so glad that you are." The bee took another deep breath in and listened, and after a short while, all the noise faded away, and she started to hear the rhythm, the raindrops falling and drumming on the folded petals of the dandelion, the faraway bird song, the knocking of a woodpecker, the whispers coming from the ground, from the rain falling on it. And as she listened longer and deeper, the rhythm became sweeter and louder, and soon all her body was shaken and her feet started to move, and she gave in fully to the dance. So much joy was to be found on it, and as she moved and danced and wiggled her bum, a sound came from her, and then she heard the sound of the dandelion, and all of those sounds around her weaved together into one song, and in her ecstatic expression she lost the track of time, and she hasn't noticed that the rain has stopped and that the sun has come up again. And under the warmth of the sun rays, the dandelion petals opened up, revealing the dancing and singing bee to the awakened world. The birds tweeted, the clouds smiled, and the bee sisters started to gather around, so much so that soon there was a swarm of bees around her. And soon all of them were singing and dancing in the same way. And the busy bee opened her eyes and looked at all the beauty around her and smiled to her sisters. And they all smiled back, raising their bums in the air, wiggling them in celebration of this sister bee that finally learned the true nature of honey. Until next time, the dandelion said. Until next dance, the bee answered and smiled. She gathered her baskets full of pollen and took off with her sisters to go back to the hive, ready to make the golden, delicious honey full of song, dance, and shared rhythm of joy.